What's up everyone? You're watching Degreeless Engineering, a channel where we engineer using experience. This episode, I wanted to do a recap on that powder-coated build sheet I did myself for the Raise 3D Pro 3 printer. If you didn't catch that episode, I'll put a link in the description below so you can watch the episode where I powder-coated my own build sheet for the Raise 3D Pro 3 printer. Basically, I got tired of the Buildtak. We won't get into it. Check that video out. It's pretty cool. So I just want to talk about how it's been performing, what I would do differently, how it stacks up against actual Buildtak, and if I honestly think you should do it at home. Let's get into it. It's really nothing new. It's not new technology. Powder-coated build sheets like this have been around for quite a while now, and they are super popular. This is a textured powder-coated build sheet from Bamboo Labs for my brand new P1S, which I strongly recommend. I also have them on my Prusas, and they just work really well for what I print with. Now, this obviously isn't for a Raise 3D Pro 3 printer, but tomato, tomato. How is it performing? Well, I've been printing for 3 months on this basically homemade powder-coated build sheet, and overall it's been doing really, really well for something that basically cost me nothing to make. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case for everyone. Surely you will either have to buy a powder coating gun, which why would you do that for one sheet, or have a friend, or maybe even pay for one up front. But ultimately what you're going to get is a solid build sheet that you're not going to have to do really any maintenance on other than cleaning it with warm soapy water. Some things to keep in mind though, on the first few prints that I did with this homemade powder coated build sheet, I noticed a few things. One of the things that I noticed was some strange residue building up inside of the enclosure on the Lexan. The top cover, the side doors have kind of like a little bit of a hazy residue. And I thought that was kind of strange, and it kind of made sense because at first I wasn't getting very good bed adhesion. I think what was happening is the powder coat was maybe not fully cured, maybe didn't outgas completely. Maybe there was some residual oils in the actual coating itself, or some impurities, or maybe that's just how it works to kind of protect itself, or maybe that's the formulation of it. Could also be there was some moisture in the powder. I'm not quite sure, but I do know that kind of residue built up coincidentally right after I put that build sheet in there. So that's something to keep in mind. Back to the point where I was not getting the best bed adhesion. I say not the best because it wasn't really comparable to the Buildtak. So the Buildtak obviously performs very, very well for what it is, but it has its flaws. This powder coated sheet was not really comparable in performance really at all at first. What really solved it was those first few prints where it got it nice and hot, and whatever needed to vent out of the actual powder coat to do its thing. The next thing I did was take it and wash it with warm soap and water. Not only that, but I took and kind of gave it a little bit of a scrub with a green Scotch-Brite pad. What that did is it took a little bit of the sheen off of the actual powder coat. Not to say it's a glossy coat in general. It's pretty much a matte coat. But ultimately, performance-wise, it's been doing a lot better since I cleaned it with obviously warm soap and water and a little scuffing of a Brillo pad. Bed adhesion really hasn't been an issue at all. Another thing I noticed when making a double-sided powder-coated build sheet for a printer that does not come with one. As you know, the Raise 3D Pro 3 has a Buildtak layer on one side of the build sheet, and it's raw metal, raw spring steel on the other side of the sheet. They did that for a reason, and the reason being is it would take quite a bit more time to heat up, and it does. And I say that loosely because it's not like it's aggressively long, but I did notice that it takes maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes longer for it to heat up to full temp. To combat that, what I've been doing is having preheat settings. So on your home screen, on your touch screen, there's a little icon, like I think it's 3 little squares in the top right. If you touch that, you can have preheat settings. And what I've been doing is essentially setting up profiles for different filaments, for different nozzles, to where before I even plug the USB stick in or send a print to the printer, I will preheat it. So it preheats the bed and the nozzle so that while I'm tinkering on the computer, getting the file ready to be printed, it's pretty much ready to go as soon as I hit start print. So that hasn't really been an issue, but it is something to keep in mind when doing a double-sided sheet. Along with that, having that layer of essentially high temperature textured plastic on what is from factory raw metal, you'll come into an issue, especially with really big prints that have a large footprint, is the magnets that actually hold the build sheet down now essentially have less magnetic pull strength because you added a layer that is, one, textured, and two, it's adding thickness between it and the metal, which it would normally grab really well to. Now, it's not that bad. Now, if you're not printing super large prints, it's not a problem. It's nice to have that other side in case this side gets damaged by a scraper, which I haven't damaged mine yet, and I've used a scraper carefully a few times. If you're doing small stuff, lots of small pieces, it's not really a problem. If you're doing something the size of maybe 8 to 10 inches in diameter, a big honking piece of plastic, I've had an issue where when I'm printing something that large, everything starts to cool, it starts to contract. It actually lifted the bed slightly off of the magnet. I would say that it's likely the cause, but it did lift the build sheet and ended up resulting in a failed print. If you are planning on doing a powder coated sheet and you're planning on doing really large prints, which is really what these printers are made for, I would recommend just powder coating one side. If I had to do it again, and I probably will soon, I'm just gonna coat one side. And this stuff, the Eastwood stuff I've used, and there's other products out there, the powder coat is super durable. As long as you do it properly, it's not gonna scratch, it's not gonna come off unless you're being really aggressive with it. In that case, don't do that. Don't scratch the hell out of your build sheet. Overall, performance-wise, it's been doing great considering I don't have to fiddle with build sheets, replacing the Buildtak. I don't have to order whole new build sheets because that's what I was doing before. I'm like, why am I gonna mess with this and try to stick this stuff down? It's gonna come right up. You can wash it in the sink without repercussion. It's super durable. You can run a scraper across it. You can print it as high a temp as you would like. As high as this thing can go, it's not gonna budge. It's not gonna give you an issue at all, other than the ones I stated, which are minor. As far as getting good adhesion with certain materials like PETG, I just add some glue stick to it because the texture is, it's not super aggressive, but it does have a texture to it. And PETG, it always kind of has issues adhering, right? So just some Elmer's glue stick, a couple swipes of that, 2 directions, send it, and it's great. So does the powder coated build sheet perform as well as Buildtak? I would say that Buildtak is much stickier than most powder coated surfaces. They've kind of perfected the tackiness of it, hence the name Buildtak. It performs really, really well, I would say, with lower temp materials if you're printing with a lot of PLA. So Buildtak is very sticky. The prints love it. They stick right to it. They grab. The other problem is if a print does stick so well to the Buildtak, something's got to give, and the weakest link is the glue. With the combination of the heat that is in the adhesive under the Buildtak, it's going to lift. It's going to come off. You print these parts that are PETG, polycarbonate, ABS, nylon. If it's a big part and the corners are pulling up, it's gonna start peeling that Buildtak, and you're gonna notice some irregularities with the Buildtak surface, some lumps, some bumps. So while it is stickier, does it perform as well as a powder coated sheet overall? Not a chance, not a chance. With a little bit of glue stick, you really don't notice a difference with bed adhesion. I'm telling you, like a couple of little, they're maybe a little bit bigger than a dice, a couple of plastic cubes essentially for some conveyor belts. I'm having to pry them off almost to the point where I'm like, am I gonna take the powder coat off of this build sheet? Obviously it didn't come off. It's super durable. The powder coat, as long as it's clean with a little bit of glue stick, it's the top dog. It's the big dog. The next thing I want to talk about is, should you do it yourself? Well, it really comes down to, okay, does your facility or do you have a powder coating gun or have the desire to buy a powder coating gun, because they are handy for a lot of things. If you're a maker or a fabricator, a tinkerer, a powder coating gun and an air compressor, or if you can find one like I had, which was like a fan powered one, which is okay. It is an awesome tool to have. I promise you will use it a lot more than you think you're going to. It is a good investment. So if you would like to invest in a tool like that and you have the area to do it, do it. If you have a friend that has one that's willing to throw some textured powder in their gun and spray this thing and bake it for you, that's even better. If you have to go to a facility and pay for it, then you might get into something that is a little more expensive. If you have a couple of, Raise 3D Pro 3 build sheets and you work for a company that's willing to pay for it, and also maybe of a powder coating shop, they might be cool saying, hey, yeah, do it. It's gonna save us money in the long run, because these Buildtak sheets that you're burning through 1, 2, 3 a month, if not more, if you're trying to maintain that consistency. If you're just doing the sheets, I think they're like 50 or 60 bucks. It's not including shipping. I'm talking about the Buildtak like replaceable layers. If you're doing the whole metal sheet with the Buildtak made into it, they're like 80, 90 bucks. It gets kind of expensive. You're talking, anywhere between $100 to $300 a month, when you could easily take a couple of pieces of metal and have a shop do even one. If they were to say, yeah, we'll do one for 150 or 200 bucks. Yeah, it is more expensive than a Buildtak sheet is online, but it's going to pay off in the long run. Like I said, I've been using the one that I did for 3 months now, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. There's no scratches, no major damage, no peeling. Even the edges are holding up. It looks exactly the same as it did when I brought it into work. It really does pay for itself. Ultimately, I would say do it. If you don't want to do it, keep doing Buildtak. Again, I think Buildtak's a great product. I think it grips really well. It's nice and sticky, but I don't know, it's kind of annoying to deal with on a printer, especially as expensive as the Pro 3. It's just one more thing about that printer to piss you off and to have to deal with. So my 2 cents, get one, have one made by any means necessary. You may be able to find a powder coated build sheet that is pretty close to the size of the Raise 3D Pro 3 bed. It may not be identical to it. I think the Pro 2, I think there's some on Alibaba or AliExpress, which, I'm not sure the exact dimensions, if it's bigger, if it's wider one way or the other, if it's slightly smaller. If you're not printing maxed out, which, those printers, they only go so far one way or the other, especially if you're doing 2 colors, the limitation is the extruders. So they can only travel so far anyways. If you're short a 1/4 inch on both sides, hey man, you're in the green. You really don't even have to have one made custom. You may be able to go that route as well. But like I said, if you are gonna do it and you are planning on making big prints, maybe just have one side coated, keep the other side clean. Obviously some sort of textured coat, nothing super aggressive. That exact Eastwood stuff worked for me. Again, it doesn't have to be Eastwood, it just has to work. It has to be textured, but you don't want it to look like bed liner, obviously. So just be mindful of what you're picking out. If you need some guidance, just use that powder, because it's been working for me. you guys so much for watching. Again, this is Degreeless Engineering, a channel where we engineer using experience. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell on your way out. I appreciate all your guys' love. If you got any questions, comments, or concerns, you know what to do.